The assignment for writing an outline for a paper. We're going to break this down into separate pieces so that it feels manageable and like something that you can definitely accomplish. So we're going to break this down into 4 parts. The first part will be our introductory paragraph, which will be 5 to 7 sentences minimum, and that's going to introduce our topic in general, explain why it's important, and this could be our hook statement or kind of drawing in the reader statement, and then a couple more sentences introducing our discussion points in general, and lastly, our 1-sentence thesis statement. Second, we're going to talk about our discussion points, and we will do this for each of them. There is a minimum of 3 for my class, but if you have more, that's totally fine. But what we're going to do here is list our point, and then we're going to list 3 sentences that are supporting our point with citations. And this sounds kind of like a pain. It's a bit of a hassle, but we're basically writing a whole chunk of our paper by doing this assignment. When we work through these, we're going to go through them together. I'm going to break this down a little further, but that's step 2. Step 3, if you have a counterpoint, you will list it, and then you will list a source, a citation to back you up, because you do want to have evidence supporting your counterpoint if you have one for your paper. And not all papers are going to have one, but if you do, you should have evidence to support it. Then 4, we're going to do our reference list, and we're going to put it in APA format as best we can, including links, and we should at this point have 5 citations minimum, 3 from the first assignment and 2 from the second assignment. The topic that I picked for a sample topic is the elderly population and how they're dealing with depression and some of the different factors that contribute to that situation. For my introduction of my topic in general, which is in green here, I showed my sentence was, aging is often considered a relaxing and reflective stage of life, but for many aging individuals, it comes with increased challenges that may cause depression. The second part, which I put in yellow, explain why it is important and get the reader interested. This could be your hook statement or your kind of drawing in of interest statement. For me, I chose to use this one. Imagine spending days or weeks without leaving home or having any meaningful interaction. This is the tough reality for some of our seniors. Yes, it's a little rough, it's a little aggressive, but the point is to draw the reader in and have them say, okay, maybe I should read this. Maybe I should read the rest of this paper. Sentences 3 and 4, or a couple more, whatever works for your situation, we're introducing our discussion points in general. And for these, I have sources here. I'm using my sources to kind of back up my ideas. This is how it sounds for me. I have many factors contribute to the likelihood of depression in older adults, including concerns about necessities like nutrition. Limited transportation can be a major factor in negative mood and cause feelings of loss of control, independence, and a lack of self-efficacy, all of which can contribute to depression. And shrinking social circles can also cause feelings of isolation and sadness. There's my introduction to my discussion points. Then my thesis statement is in blue, and I put, addressing barriers to nutrition, transportation, and social interaction is essential to improving mental health outcomes for the elderly and ensuring they receive the support they need to maintain a fulfilling quality of life. That's my introductory paragraph rough draft. Yours does not have to look like mine. I'm just trying to give you guys some examples so that you have something to kind of work off of. You do want to have all of these pieces in your introductory paragraph, but they don't have to be, obviously, they're going to be different than mine, but I wanted to show an example. Here I'm going to talk about our discussion points. My discussion point 1 with my 3 sentences minimum to support with citations. My first point was about food insecurity, decreased motivation to prepare food, and lack of knowledge or skills to prepare healthy foods, all being possible challenges to nutrition in the elderly. And now that I'm reading it, maybe it's not the best sentence. Maybe I could switch it to say possible challenges to the elderly getting good nutrition or something, but at least my point is kind of down there. So sentence 1, 2, and 3 are from different sources so that I have some evidence to talk about this main point 1. This food insecurity, decreased motivation, all of that. I need evidence to be able to back it up, because although maybe I know that because I read the paper, I have to say where I got my information from. This is the evidence I will use to build this section of my paper. So the first sentence I have And these are not the only 3 sentences in this section. These are just statements that are paraphrased from the resources that I found that will help me to support this first point. The first one, food insecurity is a problem in the older adult population in the United States and contributes to poor overall mental and physical health. And I have a source backing it up, so that's great. So sentence 2, I have Bornwall et al., 2021, discusses how older people identified loneliness and a lack of motivation to prepare meals when living alone was creating a barrier to good nutrition. Again, a little clunky, but I did paraphrase it from my source, so I know for sure I can use this as a piece of evidence as I'm building my section of my paper. Then sentence 3, having specific food restrictions due to health concerns can reduce the desire to cook because making special diets can feel like a burden and lead older adults to eat convenience foods instead. Here's my third piece of evidence. Let's go ahead and move on to the second point. My second discussion point is limited transportation and mobility can impact mood and contribute to feelings of helplessness and depression. And the 3 pieces of evidence that I'm going to kind of build off of in this section of the paper will be my first one, older adults who reported they had limited access to transportation reported lower rated feelings of general health and higher rates of depression and anxiety than those who reported accessible transportation. That's kind of laying out an important piece, right? It's saying that the elderly people who took part in this survey or this study said that limited transportation was a huge deal, right? It really impacted them. My second sentence, elderly people with limited transportation reflected intense feelings of lower perceived control and adaptability than those who had no transportation difficulties. It's giving me a piece of evidence to talk about that not only is it kind of sad to not have transportation or be able to go where you want when you want, they're identifying this gave them a feeling of a lack of control and a lack of being able to adapt to situations because of transportation difficulties. Then my third point is older adults who stopped driving reported reduced opportunities for volunteering and social interaction and decreased participation in regular health care compared to those who continued to drive, all of which are factors that negatively impact mental health. So here I have some more evidence, and is it perfect? No, it's not perfect yet, but I do have a solid paraphrased kind of chunk of material from this source that I can use in this second part where I'm talking about transportation and mobility in regards to depression. I'm going to quickly go over my example for point 3. For me, it was social isolation is an issue for many people in the elderly population and is a contributing factor to depression in this age group. My evidence points here that I got from my sources are my first one, older adults are a vulnerable population at high risk for loneliness and social isolation, which are factors for anxiety and depression. And I have 2 sources listed here because 2 of my sources made this point. I am using both of these sources as a reference. Then sentence 2, different types of social contact can be protective factors for loneliness in older adults, including increased personal social networks and utilizing community outreach resources. My second sentence, and again, it's not the second sentence in the section, it's a sentence that I pulled from this source that I paraphrased to be able to have some evidence for this whole area of the paper. My third one, phone contact and face-to-face contact had higher rates of increasing happiness than texting and group-related contact, based on research from Teeter et al. 2021, although texting and group contact were also considered to be helpful. This is great. This is great information. It allows me to be able to talk about how there are better practices to combat depression and there are not as great practices to combat depression. I have a few different ways that I can talk about this. I'm going to skip the counterpoint section because it is very similar to you giving a different discussion point section like I already showed, and my example paper doesn't have a counterpoint, so I'm going to skip it. But the reference list is what's next. Basically, it should be an APA format including links, and it should be 5 citations minimum at this point, with 3 being from our first assignment and 2 being from the second assignment. And if you switch your sources around as you go through this paper, it's fine. It's okay. Probably wouldn't after this outline, but if you switch them up to this point, that's cool. And that's kind of why we're doing this, to help us build a really solid outline. When we are building our references page, there's some kind of important things that we should be aware of. Here are references. It's labeled a reference page, not a works cited, because we're using APA, so it's called references. It's in bold print, it is centered, and it is at the top. And then the whole thing is double spaced, and this isn't the whole references page, but it's a sample. And my authors are the first thing that I see when I look at the hanging indent here. This little indented part is called a hanging indent. I'm going to show you guys how to do that. And you see they're in alphabetical order. So that is also important. So that's what we're going to talk about next. Here we can see our references are pretty much correct for capitalization and other formatting, but we do need to fix the page in general. And I will give a disclaimer, this should be a capital C right here. I messed up, but it's all good, we'll fix it. Here our references are pretty much correct otherwise, so we're going to format the rest of this page. First we will take out the spaces between all of these references, because if we don't remove these extra spaces, when we double space everything, it's going to be messed up. Just delete the spaces so that everything is kind of squished together. There are no spaces. Then we're going to go back to the top once those spaces are removed, and we'll put a title here. It's a references page, not a works cited, because we're doing APA, so it's references. We're going to type it and just capitalize the first letter, and we need to make it bold print, so we're going to highlight it, click the B, and that will make it bold print. And then we're going to center it by using that center align button at the top of the screen in our toolbar, and that will push it towards the center. So once we do that, we need to double space everything. So we are going to highlight all of the things on the page so that we can double space them. And to do that, once they're all gray, we've highlighted them, we're going to go to the line and paragraph spacing button, and we're going to click the number 2 for double spacing. And that is going to make everything that we've highlighted double spaced. Now we have to do a hanging indent. To do that, we're going to highlight all of our sources. We're going to go to the top of the page, and we're going to click that little arrow under the paragraph menu. We're going to go to indents and spacing, and then we're going to select up here, Indents and Spacing tab. Then we're going to go to here, Hanging Indent, select Hanging, and then select OK. And now all of our references have a hanging indent. We can look down, everything's great, we don't have any extra spaces, we have nothing weird going on, everything is kind of formatted, and we should be pretty much good to go. That is how we format a references page, and also how we set up an outline.